Welcome to Globalpose News. Georgia has seen a fourth night of street demonstrations and a string of public resignations, triggered by the ruling party's decision to suspend a push to start talks on joining the European Union. As tens of thousands of Georgians headed back to the streets of several cities, Prime Minister Irakli Kobakides said they had fallen victim to opposition lies and he rejected calls for new elections. He confirmed reports that Georgia's ambassador to the US, David Zulkarnaeni, had become the latest senior diplomat to stand down, explaining that he had come under considerable pressure. But Kobakides sought to deny the reason for the protests, saying on Sunday that "we have not suspended anything, it's a lie." Only 3 days before, his party Georgian Dream had accused the EU of using talks on joining the Union as blackmail and said the government had decided not to put that issue on the agenda until the end of 2028. Pro-EU protesters were out in big numbers again on Sunday night, and when fireworks were aimed at the Parliament building as well as riot police, the police responded with water cannon. Large groups of riot police huddled inside streets beside Parliament, and it was not until early on Monday that the protests on the main Rustaveli Avenue were dispersed. As demonstrators fled the area, a number of people were detained, including Zurab Japaridze, one of the leaders of opposition alliance Coalition for Change. Georgia's Interior Ministry said later that 21 officers were injured in clashes overnight, while the pro-opposition president, Salome Zurabishvili, said arrested protesters had been subjected to beatings and cited lawyers who said the majority of them had sustained serious injuries. Georgia's increasingly authoritarian government has been accused by the EU and US of democratic backsliding. On Saturday, the US took the significant step of suspending its strategic partnership with Georgia. Kobakides insisted that Georgian Dream was still committed to European integration, and we are continuing on our path to the European dream. And yet an increasing array of public officials do not appear to believe that is the case. Several ambassadors have resigned, and hundreds of civil servants and more than 3,000 teachers have signed letters condemning the decision to put EU accession on hold. Many Georgians have been shocked by the level of violence directed at Georgian journalists as well as protesters. Dozens of reporters have been beaten or pepper sprayed and some have needed hospital treatment. Georgia's human rights ombudsman Levan Iosliani said this is brutality, and he appealed to police not to abuse their power. The Prime Minister said it was opposition groups and not the police that had meted out systemic violence. Georgian ex-ambassador to the EU Natalie Sabinadze, now at Chatham House in the UK, believes the level of violence, the string of resignations and civil disobedience indicate a qualitative change to the protests now taking place. Maybe the government thought people would be scared, but it's not working out like this, she told the BBC. Yesterday civil society activists and artists went to the public broadcaster and took it over and forced their way into the live stream. I've seen this before, in pre-revolutionary Georgia, in 2003. Georgia's pro-Western president is due to step down in a matter of weeks. However, since last month's contested parliamentary elections which opposition parties have denounced as rigged, she has become a powerful figurehead, rallying protesters against the government and calling for a new vote. She and the protesters accused the government of aiming to drag their country back into Russia's sphere of influence, even though an overwhelming majority of the population backs joining the EU. Georgia has a population of some 3.7 million and 20% of its territory is under Russian military occupation in 2 breakaway regions. During the day on Sunday, a small group of protesters occupied a traffic intersection in front of Bilizai State University. "I'm here for my country's future and the future of my 3-year-old son," said one protester called Salome, aged 29. "I don't want him to spend his life at protests and I don't want a Russian government." While Georgian Dream flatly denies any links to the Kremlin, It has in the past year adopted Russian-style laws that target civil society groups with funding from abroad as well as LGBT rights. Half an hour's walk away from the daylight protest, a small army of cleaners was trying to scrub off graffiti from a wall in front of the Georgian parliament. Some of the windows of the building were smashed on Saturday night, and an effigy was set alight of Bidzina Ivanishvili, the billionaire seen as the driving force behind Georgian Dream's 12 years in power. The question now is what will happen next in Georgia's deepening political and constitutional crisis. The Georgian Dream government's relations with its Western partners are very badly damaged. The EU's new foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, warned on Sunday that the government's actions would have direct consequences from EU side, and the US decision to suspend its strategic partnership will also be widely felt. The Georgian Prime Minister had little time for the president or her call for new elections. Mrs. Salome Zurabishvili has 4 Fridays left as president, and she can't get used to it. I understand her emotional state, but of course on the 29th of December she'll have to leave. For more updates, news, views from around the globe, follow us on all our social media platforms at Globalpose.